India and Somalia have a historic relationship, a century-old relationship, and later this month, top Somali leaders are expected to be in India for the India-Africa Forum Summit. With me is the top diplomat, the Somali Ambassador to India, to talk about the bilateral relationship and other aspects. So welcome to WION. It's pleasure to be here at the embassy, and my first question to you is about the upcoming summit, the India-Africa Forum Summit. It is happening after a gap of almost a decade. How do you see this summit as?
Thank you very much. The Indian African Summit, I think, is a very valuable platform of which a meaningful dialogue and discussions between the leadership of the two regions can take place. And as a diplomat from African continent, we have been looking forward for this important gathering. As you clearly mentioned, this has been delayed for quite some time. The last Indian African Summit took place here in New Delhi in 2015, almost, as you clearly mentioned, 1 decade ago. So very important platform. The two most popular regions of the world are gathering here. Critical issues of the trade, technology, agriculture and medicine, capacity enhancements will be discussed.
What are the asks by the Somali side from this summit? Any expectation from the Indian side as the outcome from the summit? Last summit had a lot of outcomes when it comes to India's engagement with Africa, but any proposal from the Somali side?
India-Somali relationship is a very old one, and it is people to people and cultural connection. It has been going on for quite some time. Initially discovered through sailors through the Indian Oceans, connecting the two people through trade and commerce. And since then it has been going, and it went through dramatic transformations over the years. Before the civil war in Somalia in 1991, the Indian-Somali relationship were mainly on commerce and education, and there was a large Indian community at that time living in the major Somali cities and districts. In fact, there was even a time that the Indian High Commission in Mogadishu used to run an Indian school whereby students Indian origin and the Somalis used to attend. The civil war has changed a lot, and during the civil war, India also played a critical role in peace making in Somalia. They sent almost close to 5,000 troops to UNISOM II at that time, between 1993 and 1994. And in fact, 12 Indian soldiers actually lost their lives in that war. And we are all grateful for the contribution that India has made during that time. And also there has been, in that period, when Somalia was going through the difficult period, India was also providing certain aid and grant to Somalia. Now, after the war, things have changed more recently. So the relationship now moves around trade. India is the second largest trading partner of Somalia, with an estimated about 1 billion trade volume currently as we speak now. Also, there is a large Somali community who are coming here for health services.
I was coming to that aspect. In terms of the people-to-people relationship, you've already given an overview about the relationship in terms of the political relationship, but people-to-people relationship, how do Somalis see India? How many Somali people come to India for education, for health? If you can give us an overview.
The Somalia and India relationship is, as I told you, is a very old one. So there is a huge cultural exchange. If you travel to Somalia and major cities in Somalia, and you are an Indian, in fact, you will not feeling that you are outside, because you see the same food, the same most or less dressed, and the same culture in general. And that has been going on for quite some time. And in terms of education, India has been for quite a long preferred destinations for the Somali students who are looking at postgraduate programs. And in fact, a significant number of the Somali leadership and Somali elites have graduated from Indian schools. Very good example is our president, Dr. Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, who did his master's program here in the late 80s. Also the Deputy Prime Minister of Somalia, His Excellency Salah Jama, also is a graduate. In fact, I understand he came at a young age, and he did large part of his primary and secondary school and perhaps his first degree here.
He speaks very good Hindi as well.
Exactly, yeah, that's why he speaks the language, and recently he was been in the Indian media because of the interview that he's given in Indian language. So this is just example, but there is a large number of the Somali who graduated over the years, and still we have a significant number of students currently. There is also some scholarships also that goes to the Somalis for every year. Also there is in addition to that, there is a short-time training, short-time capacity enhancement training programs. Recently we hosted some diplomats from our Minister of Foreign Affairs who came here for special training programs at the diplomatic center. So it's a very deep. In terms of medical, as you mentioned, I think Somalia is one of the largest countries sending a medical tourist to Somalia. The statistics we have as an embassy in 2024, 2 years back, the last data we have, and approximately 12,000 Somalis come here, both patients and attendee for medical purposes, and they are coming in a large, getting medications in different cities of India, Hyderabad, New Delhi, Mumbai, and other cities. So it's a very dynamic. The commerce also is going on, and this coming forum, it's going to be an important platform for the leadership of India and Somalia to discuss ways of furthering these relationships and exploring more on quite extensive areas, including agriculture, of course, medical education, technology, and of course security. We share this Indian Oceans, and that requires extensive coordination in terms of securing the maritime routes. Now we know the challenges that the world is facing in terms of transportations and the rest. So it's a critical time. It's an important time. The two regions and the two countries, particularly Somalia and India, will definitely use this platform to discuss critical issues and ways of furthering the relationship.
You mentioned 20,000 Somalis come to India for education per year since 2020?
No, education actually, the number is not specific. We know the scholarship is 15 seats for every year through ICCR. Also there is time-to-time, short-time training for particularly the government employees who come here. But it is the medical tourism that the number is high, and 2024 we sort of recorded around 11 to 12,000 Somalis come to that year alone.
That's a significant number. You also mentioned about security. India and Somali are neighbors in many ways because of the Indian Ocean. You are an Indian Ocean country. We are an Indian Ocean country. There are engagement under various subjects like, of course, the IORA as well. So what kind of engagement there are when it comes to security, especially maritime security, where there has been a worry over piracy?
Piracy is one of the challenges that the countries in the region face, including India and Somalia. And as you may be aware, India is a member of the anti-piracy task force, and they have been doing a quite great job in preventing and controlling the piracy to undermine the peaceful transportation across the sea. And we look forward for the continuation of that. We also look about the Indian support for Somalia's fight against terrorism. As you may be aware, the country, Somalia, we have been fighting against Al-Shabaab group, which internationally has been, recognized as international terrorist. And Somalia is partnering all the countries and in fight against the terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. Terrorism, of course, it doesn't have religion. It's fighting in India, it's fighting in Somalia, it's fighting all the places, and we need to have a global stand against the terrorism. And I think fight against insecurity and terrorism will be an important component of the upcoming Indian African Summit, because a good number of African countries are going through these experiences and seeing, uprising of terrorism, armed groups, and so on and so forth.
You made a very valid point. Terrorism is something that is a concern for India. India has been a victim of terrorism. We're just marking the 1-year anniversary of the deadly Pahalgam terror attack by Pakistan-trained terrorists. So, essentially, in terms of terrorism, what kind of communication, cooperation both sides have been having? You have mentioned that this will be a topic at the India-Africa summit as well. So, what can India and Africa together do to deal with this scourge?
I think there are a lot they can do. One area is India, of course, they have the human resource and the knowledge and the capacity to deal with terrorism, and in that line they can support Africa in terms of information gathering, in terms of countering using technology, of course, which is very important nowadays in counter-terrorism. So India can offer a lot in terms of experiences and know-how to Africa and Somalia and Africa in general. Of course, information sharing is a critical important for both sides, and also thinking about a joint missions of securing the maritime routes like Indian Ocean.
Joint mission, if you can perhaps elaborate on that?
There is a task force already, international task force, which is now monitoring the Indian Ocean from the Somali side. So if Africa and India in general can also think about similar modalities at the highest level, African-Indian level, that would have been very, very important.
A very fascinating idea. So moving on to the situation in West Asia, we know that the situation still continues. The 40-day war might be over, but there is a temporary ceasefire, a very fragile ceasefire. Now, how has the situation in West Asia impacted your country, which is geographically near to that region?
It very much actually impacted and in different ways. I think the first prominent one is an economic impact. It has limited the transportations, and Somalia, it has the longest coastline in Africa, almost 3,000 plus, and there are important ports in different places of Somalia, like port of Mogadishu, Kismayo, Berbera, and the rest. And in my understanding now is that the war in the Middle East, Iran war, has disrupted the transport and has very much negatively impacted the local revenue. Also, the Somali, we used to have a large Somali diaspora living in different parts of the world, and this period is the time they used to come back to the country and have good time with their relatives and their loved ones, and that used to bring a significant economy to the country. Now, because of the transportation is now disrupted, and also there is a global economic impact, people are not hesitant to travel nowadays, and that had a very negative impact on the Somali revenue generations and then economy. And we look forward for a positive resolution for this problem.
A positive resolution. This is something that everyone will be discussing at the India-Africa Summit, I assume?
Definitely. It's going to be a topic because the war has impacted both Africa and India. We are all global now, living in a global village where world is economically, security is interlinked. And disruption in one region is going to have a negative ramifications of across the world. And this meeting is going to be a discussion of South-South partnerships and to have a say of what is happening in the world, because as I told you, that this is the two regions where almost 1/4 of the global populations are living. Together is almost 3 billion people. Each 1.5 maybe closely to one another. So it's a huge populations, and we need to have a voice. And this is the type of platform we need is to collaborate, to discuss and partner, so that we can have, under the leadership of India, to have a South say in what's happening in the world.
Coming back to the security cooperation, defense, is this an element in Somalia and India relationship? And you also mentioned about a long coastline. That means a lot of ports as well. Are you looking at Indian ports being connected to Somali ports?
That is one area that I think the leadership are going to discuss. There is going to be a business forum in Clift alongside with the African Summit, where I think the politicians and the ministers from the business and economic sectors are going to discuss about ways of improving the economic relationship, including investment of the port and also linking the ports and airports together. So there is that element of economic forum within the African Indian Summit.
Okay. And anything on defense relationship between the two countries?
Perhaps it's going to be one of the areas that bilateral relationships are going to discuss, but I don't think if that is an element for the overall summit, for African Indian Summit. But of course, there's going to be so many bilateral relationships. I think all the 54 African countries are invited here. So there's going to be a lot of discussions bilateral in between Africans and also in between each individual countries and also India on one side.
And who is going to represent from Somalia?
We are expecting the president to come here and our foreign minister, unless things have changed.
Okay.
So we look forward for that. If there is no, so far we're still waiting for our president and the prime and foreign minister to participate. But if there is any change for the the delegations, of course, then we will be informing to the Indian side.
So one of the key pillars of your foreign policy is the unity and integrity of your country. That is something that you have emphasized even at the United Nations Security Council. You are a member of the UNSC, a non-permanent member. We know that recently, in past few months, Somalia has been in headlines for a particular reason, that is Somaliland, and there are countries who are recognizing, and there are countries also showing support to your country's unity and integrity. India is one of those countries who has strongly supported your unity and integrity. What do you have to say on that?
Actually, we value and we appreciate the Indian support of Somali's unity and independence, and I think this is an international norm that every respected country should respect, and India has played a critical role for that. I mean, in the 21st century, you cannot just come and recognize a region within a country. That doesn't make sense. And it doesn't support the stability and progress we're talking about. We are now discussing about bringing the entire Africa and India together, not to divide. So we are moving towards a globalized world where people are coming together, and we are, expecting the members of the United Nations to respect the rules of the international and the UN, African Charter, and all other intergovernmental and international organizations. That's what the Somali is asking. And I think India has been very clear on that. They came up with a strong statement supporting the Somali unity, and they continue doing that in our day-to-day activities.
Talking about India in Somalia, you talked about the small diaspora that was there in the past, but how do Somalians see India as in terms of the soft power? Is Bollywood, Hindi songs popular in Somalia, or do you see India as also a country which has influenced you in many ways, whether it's your leadership speaking Hindi?
As I told you that Somalis are familiar with India. I mean, it's not a country which is new. Every ordinary Somali, even if he doesn't visit India, they are familiar with through maybe the interaction they had, because as I told you, there used to be a large Indian community in Somalia for a long period of time. And there is also this cultural linkages in terms of food and race. And if you go to Somalia now, You can see people eating biryani, so it's not new, or maybe drinking, karak tea everywhere.
Okay.
So it is similar, or chapati. Even the names, we call it chapati, even in our case, sambusa and everything. So even the language, because of that connection that has been going on for quite some time, even the language are sharing some names common, which are transferred across the Indian Ocean. So India is one of the few countries that the Somalis in general are familiar with, either through the films they used to watch, through the education, and maybe through the large Indian community that used to live there. So also, when we all the other, just imagine in a country where, every year plus 10,000 are coming to visit, that means the contact is high. So it's not something new, and Somalis are also travelers, so they meet in the world, the same as Indians. Somalis also used to have a large community in the Middle East, the same as Indians. So the contact between the two peoples are not restricted into a specific environment or type.
So my last question to you, in terms of India and Somalia, what kind of practical areas of cooperation you're looking at? I know the education bit, the health bit, but in terms of perhaps more engagement between the two sides at the government level, or perhaps in terms of more connectivity as well, anything that is on the table that can bring the two countries closer?
I think one area, one of the areas that I expect the leaders to discuss is technology sector. Somalia is looking for digitalization of its economy, something that India is really doing pretty well. And I think that is one of the areas that we would like to see in the future. Also, element of capacity building, very important for us as a country that is recovering from a long time of civil war. There is a need to improve the capacity of the community in all sectors, something India can easily provide a support. So trade also, we need to improve. I talk about 1 billion volume for last year. That's small. We need to discuss about the barriers that are preventing for open trade between two sides, and I think that's also one area that we like to elaborate and discuss more.
On that note, thank you so much, sir, for speaking to WION. It was lovely speaking to you, getting a view about Somalia, and perhaps there will be more engagement as your top leadership is expected to travel to New Delhi for the India-Africa Forum Summit. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much.